Okay, this is video 3, and I'm going to continue my life story. Where I left off at, I believe I was between the ages of 10 and 11. Maybe a little bit younger, but one thing that we used to do at the Baptist Children's Home where I was resident is we would take trips every summer. Like, we would go to Georgia. There was a Baptist Children's Home in Georgia, and we would stay there for like a week or two, and we would go to travel around to different things like Six Flags over Georgia. So we would take trips, and that was so cool. I'd never been to an amusement park or anything like that before, so it was really cool to be able to get to do that. And during the summer, we had a lot of fun. During the summer, we would take trips different places. We had a pool out there at the Baptist Children's Home. We'd go swimming every day, and they just always had stuff planned for us. We'd take little day trips to the beach and to different springs and rivers and around Florida. So we just had a lot of fun there. We had a really big bus, and whenever we would go out of town, like for an overnight trip, we would take the bus. And the first time that we went to Georgia to go to Six Flags over Georgia, I'm not going to use any names at all or who this person is, because I don't know how it's going to play out. But there was a guy that he was not a resident at the children's home. He wasn't. I don't want to say he was 18, but I know that he drove, so I know that he was at least 16. And I remember sitting on the bus, and I was sitting by myself, and I remember he came over and was like, "Can I sit down beside you?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So we were talking and stuff like that, and as it got dark, I remember I had a blanket and a pillow, and he, stuck his hand under the blanket, and he started touching me. And, I was just kind of like, don't do that. And he was like, "Shh, don't say, shh, just be quiet, And I, at this point, had basically, every time this had happened to me, and I couldn't understand why this always was happening to me. But, I would always get the worst end of it. So I, at this point, have kind of just, don't want to say I learned to just accept it, but I kind of did. I just kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything, and I just allowed it to go on. He fondled me, he touched me, he fingered me. He asked me to touch him, and I remember I just turned away and I faced the window, and he was like, "Come on, just do it." And I remember I turned around and I just looked at him, and he was like, "Okay." And he moved seats. Well, at this point in time, the abuse with the older girl that lives in my cottage is still going on, but it's not happening as frequently because she basically found someone else to victimize that was younger than me. And I know this is horrible to say, but I was just glad that it wasn't me. It only happened to me every blue moon at this point in time. It was not a regular thing anymore at all. So life was getting to be pretty good. Well, I ended up moving cottages because of my behavior. So they moved me into the older girl's cottage. I'm now living with the other girl that was sexually molesting me and having me perform oral sex on her. So I'm now living with her, and I remember she came into my room one night and she just started wailing on me. I was laying in my bed and she just started hitting me. And she was like, "If you ever tell anyone, I'll kill you, and I'll beat you up so bad." And, she's like, I'll tell stories on you. And, I was just in shock. I was just like, oh my God. Well, nothing happened that night. Nothing happened for a while after that. But I remember one night, me and her were the youngest two in the house, and we had to go to bed, I think, at 9, and everybody else that was older got to go to bed at 10. And I remember we went to bed, and she came into my room, and she was like, she's like, "You need to come to my room." And she's like, "You know what I want. You know what I want to do." So we were laying in her bed, and I remember that she was fingering me, and she was asking, she wanted me to suck on her breast. So I was sucking on her breast, and she was fingering me, and I guess one of the girls seen us. And they went and told the foster parent, and we were unaware. But we had like a big window at the very, very top that led into a hallway, so the house parents could walk down the hallway and without opening the door could see into the room through this long window that each room had in it. Well, the next thing I know, the house parents like busting in the room, and we're like trying to act like we weren't doing anything, and she's just like, you go to your room. And I heard her screaming and hollering, and she comes in my room and she's like, I'm not going to get into this with you right now. We'll talk about this in the morning. I was so terrified. I was like, oh my God, they're going to move me. They're going to place me someplace else. What do I do? What do I do? Well, that's the first time I ran away. I had a sponsor that lived at the end of the road. I would say maybe about a mile away. She was a teacher at my school, and she was also one of my sponsors, which meant I would go spend weekends with her sometimes. Well, I ran away to her house. And I told her everything that happened, and I begged her not to tell anybody. But I didn't really tell her that it was like sexual abuse. I told her that what had happened, and that we got caught, and that I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to get hurt either. And she was like, well, did they beat you up? Did they do this? And I just wouldn't answer any of the questions. Well, I lived with her. The children's home decided that, if that's the way that I ran away from, if I ran away to there, that maybe it was best for me to stay there. So she went through the process of dealing with children and families to be able to keep me. I lived with her for a couple of months. I didn't know it at the time, but I was being put up for adoption. Well, I did know that I was being put up for adoption, but I didn't know that there was a family that was interested in me and that the adoption process was about to start. So that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother chapter. And I'll get into that in just a minute. I need to take a break for a little bit and get my mind straight and calm down a little bit. I'm starting to get really hyped up from telling all this. So I'm going to take a little break, but I'll be back to finish my videos. So thank you for listening.